All right, today we're going to tackle something you're a part of every single day: labor. We're going to go way beyond the 9 to 5 and really break down the core components: the human effort, the rules of power, and the economic value that define the entire world of work. So let's dive in. So, what does work really mean? I mean, we all think we know, right? It's what you do to get a paycheck, it's your job. But if we really start to peel back the layers, is that all it is? What is this massive system that we're all a part of? Well, this is where the source material gives us this brilliant framework. It suggests that pretty much all of labor, I mean everything from a factory floor to a tech startup, can be understood through three core pillars: the human effort we put in, the rules that govern our relationships, and the value that's created and then, divided up. We're going to use these three pillars to build our understanding today. So here's how we're going to break it all down. First up, we'll look at the fundamental engine of work. That's human effort itself. Then we'll explore the rules of the game, all the power dynamics at play. After that, we'll get into the price of labor, how work actually gets valued. And finally, we'll check out work's evolving playbook to see where all of this is headed.
Okay, let's start at square one with the absolute core of all economic activity, our own effort.
And this is really the key takeaway here. Human effort isn't just about lifting heavy things or physical labor. It's also the cognitive engagement, all the thinking, the planning, the creativity that we bring to the table. These two things together are the essential raw materials for creating pretty much anything of value. And this is where it gets really interesting, how we relate to that effort. For some, it's a job, which is really just a set of tasks you perform. For others, it's an occupation. Think being a licensed plumber or an accountant. It's a recognized field with its own standards. But a vocation? Well, that's something else entirely. That's when your work is deeply tied to your identity, driven by a real sense of meaning. It's a pretty powerful distinction to make. Right, and it's important to remember that not all effort is created equal. This idea of quality of labor is what makes one workforce more productive than another. It's really the sum of our skills, our health, our education, and maybe most importantly, our ability to adapt. Investing in these things, that's what really drives innovation. All right, so we've got this idea of individual effort. But, it doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? It operates inside this huge, complex system of rules and power. And that brings us to our second section, the rules of the game. So this whole setup is actually a field of study called industrial relations. And you can think of it as this constant three-way negotiation. You've got states or governments setting the ground rules like minimum wage. You've got firms, the employers, setting their own policies. And then you have unions who represent the collective voice of the workers. The work life we all experience is a direct result of the balance of power between these three. And one of the most powerful tools in this whole negotiation is collective bargaining. This is the process that really turns individual weakness into collective strength. Think about it. One person walking in and asking for a raise, they might get ignored. But 1,000 people all asking for the same thing through their union, now that's a conversation the employer has to have. Okay, so that's the system in theory. But we all know things don't always go smoothly. Negotiations can totally break down, agreements get violated. So what happens when one side feels like the rules of the game just aren't being followed? Well, there's actually a formal process for exactly this situation. It usually starts when a grievance gets filed. That's the formal complaint. This kicks off a whole system designed to make sure there's accountability. And if the two sides just can't agree, it might go to arbitration, where a neutral third party comes in to make a final call and settle it. It's a way to find a solution without, shutting everything down. But sometimes, even that isn't enough. And that brings us to the ultimate leverage workers have, which this quote just nails. A strike is the final play. Workers can't force a company to do something, but they can withhold the one thing the company absolutely needs: their labor. It's an incredibly powerful tool that has shaped history. Okay, so we've covered the effort itself and the rules that govern it. Now let's talk about the third pillar. How does all this stuff get measured, valued, and, paid for? Welcome to Section 3, the price of labor. This table really lays it out perfectly. It's cause and effect, right? On one side, you've got the yield, or the output. That's the tangible result of your work: the number of cars built, reports written, customers helped. And on the other side, you've got wages. That's how that value gets turned into money and comes back to you. And it's shaped by both your productivity and your power to bargain. But here's the thing. The way we organize work to get the most output, it creates this fundamental tension.
The division of labor, breaking a big process into tiny, specialized tasks, is incredibly efficient. The assembly line is the classic example. But the flip side, which thinkers like Karl Marx pointed out, is alienation. When your entire job is just tightening one bolt all day long, you can lose any real connection to the finished product and what it all means.
And that tension is really at the core of this historical idea, the proletariat. Now, this term just refers to the class of people whose main economic power comes from their ability to work for a wage simply because they don't own the capital, the factories, the equipment, the means of production. And this setup creates a kind of built-in conflict over how the value created by all that labor gets divided up. Okay, and all of that brings us to where we are now and where we're going. The playbook for work is changing fast. Automation, the gig economy, remote work, it's all rewriting the rules. So let's look at work's evolving playbook. One of the biggest trends in modern companies is this split you see right here. You have the labor core. These are your stable, full-time employees that the company invests in. Training, benefits, the whole deal. And then you have this growing peripheral workforce. These are your contractors, freelancers, gig workers. They give the company flexibility, but they have way less stability and fewer protections. And this trend is pushing us towards some pretty radical new models, like what's called zero-based hour contracts. Just imagine a system where there's no default 40-hour week. Instead, every single hour has to be justified. Your manager might approve a 3-hour block for a specific task on Monday, and then a 5-hour block for a different project on Tuesday. It's all about maximum efficiency and tying every minute of work to a specific outcome. So you see the trade-off here, right? It's a classic two-sided coin. For a business, this model offers the ultimate flexibility. It's incredibly efficient. But for a worker, well, it raises some really serious questions about having a stable, predictable income and the kind of social safety net that traditional jobs have always offered.
And all of this leaves us with a huge, critical question for the future. Labor rights have always had to evolve, from basic safety standards to anti-discrimination laws. So as the very idea of a job changes, and every single hour of our work is put under a microscope, what new framework of rights are we going to need to make sure that work is still fair, dignified, and sustainable for everyone? That's a question we're all going to have a hand in answering. Thanks for joining me.